Welcome to the Hamurana Bay. This is episode 141 of our beekeeping show.
Oh dear, burglar covered in bee stings. That's sad, isn't it?
Absolutely, Gary, but there's a point to this whole story.
There is. There's a sting in their tail. We are Gary.
And Margaret.
We are Kiwimana, and Kiwimana are beekeepers from the hills of the Waitaki Ranges on the wild west coast of Auckland in the North Island of New Zealand.
Yes, we build and sell beekeeping equipment and bees, provide beekeeper services and education.
And the show notes for this podcast are at kiwi.bz/141. And who helped us bring this show to you? This show is made possible by you, our amazing supporters.
Every show, we read out our top supporters, and on the first show of each month, we read out all the supporters. Thanks to you all. Without you, we wouldn't be able to keep doing this, and we appreciate it, and you motivate us. Oh, yes.
That's right, and this week we'd like to thank Trish Stretton,
Lisa Morrissey, Dan McGivern, Tony Lum, Nathan Buzzinger, Beekeeping, Malcolm Sanford, Tim Wilcox, Daniel Bokros, Carolyn Sloan,
Robin O'Connell, John Paff, Cameron Mishkin, Chris Palgrave, Finn's Bees,
Gutney Hunter, Buzzed Honeys, Humane Bee Relocation, Mandy Shaw, Barbara Weber, Christopher Brown, Greg Parr, Irene Townsend, Michelle Lash, and Karen Shields. And I nearly ran out of breath there, Gary. Thanks, guys. You are awesome. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Okay. This week, Gary, I'm going on a big tangent, so I hope you're ready.
I'm ready. Are the listeners ready, Bart?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know how we love to share, guys. Well, we've got 2 new shows this month from top beekeeping podcasts, and the first one is from Beekeeping at 5 Apple Farm.
Yes, in this new podcast from Lee Knott from 5 Apple Farms, she discusses sustainable beekeeping, bees, planting trees and shrubs for pollinators at 5 Apple Farms in North Carolina. Here's a little promo from Lee.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beekeeping at 5 Apple Farm podcast. I'm Lee Knott. Today I'm going to continue on the queen rearing subject. This is definitely intermediate material, so beginners, please don't give up. I'm going to get back to talking about more beginner topics very shortly here. And for you at this time...
Yeah, so she covers a lot of beginner stuff and a lot of new stuff. It's really good. It's got queen rearing talks and everything. So that's a new podcast that just came out a few months back. They've reached the magic goal of 7 episodes, so so congratulations, Lee, on doing your podcast.
Yeah, and all the best with all the planting trees, because we need more trees for our bees.
Absolutely, and the next new podcast is called The Hive Jive, not to be confused with the Beehive Jive from London.
I know, I was getting a bit confused there for a minute, Gary, but this is the Master Beekeeper, John Swan, and Fisher Guide
and new beekeeper Ken Malam discuss how to get started with the bees. And they have a fun show, but let's listen to the promo, and that sort of explains a bit more what they're trying to do.
Fantastic.
What happens when you take a redneck fishing guide and pair him up with a master beekeeper? Well, we're about to find out. Join our host Ken Milam and John Swan as they help you brave the sting of beekeeping to reap the sweet rewards. This is The Hive Jive.
So, now, John, we're doing the Hive Jive, right? Are we still talking radio?
We're on the Hive Jive.
Okay, we're on the
now.
Hive Jive now. Okay.
Got to put the radio stuff away.
Where my bees?
Where are your bees? Where are my bees
Where's
at?
my bees at? Where my bees be at? But anyway.
Yeah, and those guys they're fun couple of characters, and I think they actually recorded at a radio station, so it sounds really awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and a lot of fun in that one. So have a listen, folks, and see what you think.
Yeah, and if you want to check out those shows, it's at kiwi.bz/top-pods, and you'll see all the links and the show notes to those shows.
Awesome.
And what does it mean to be an organic or natural beekeeper, Margaret?
Well, today, Gary, I'm going off on a little tangent.
Oh, not too long, I hope.
Oh, I'll do my best. See,
Okay.
criticism. Yes, more criticism. Well, being organic or a natural beekeeper has meant that over the years we have been beekeeping. There have been criticisms of the work we have done. A lot of this coming from older commercial beekeepers who gave advice when we first started for something that was not what they had any long-term experience about or in, and that was the varroa mite. They didn't understand all the impact that this varroa mite was going to have on bees and beehives and managing. The other area we used to get hassled about was about the perspective that we were working from of a hobbyist beekeeper who wanted to actually be organic. A lot of these beekeepers, the older beekeepers, poo-pooed the ideas that we shared. So we've had that challenge, guys. But the reason we decided to go towards a more natural way of managing bees is because we began to see how stressed bees were. You know, we saw that movie More Than Honey, and we saw the processes that were being done overseas and in other countries, and some of the ways the bees were being treated caused a lot of stress to them. So the other side of it was the varroa mite, which turned up here in New Zealand, and we had seen some of the things that were going on overseas. And so Gary mainly started doing research on synthetic miticides and different beekeeping or beehive management practices. And some of these methods were like the breeding side of things, feeding methods, how to set up a hive, and then the seasonal influences and impacts. And what we consider, or what we were searching for, was best practice for beekeeper hygiene, at least eliminate high-risk ways of spreading disease and that kind of thing, and also just the natural risks and threats that bees are facing. So we began to understand that if we did what we did, we could do it in a natural way, as best you can when you keep bees in a box. Anyway, we've also heard comments on some of the forums about beginner beekeepers.
So where are you getting all this feedback from?
Well, I've actually been just watching some of the interactions on some of the beekeeping forums, and a lot of them are focused on beginner beekeepers. They're saying that beginners can't manage their hives without using synthetic miticides because the organic methods are too difficult for them.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it appears to me. So a lot of these forums are recommending that people use miticides, and I think that prevents a lot of learning on the behalf of the beginner, because by ruling out how to manage hives so they stay healthy rather than chucking in the stuff which is not really working, and so if people rely on them, they're going to fail, and then who's helping who, you know?
Well, I think they really need to learn how to do mite counts, though, to make sure that whatever they're using is working.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, in an organic sense, I believe that beginners can do it. I believe they can do it organically, and I believe that they can do it well.
You have to be diligent, but don't you?
You have to understand that, yeah.
You can't just put bees in your garden and forget about them.
No, that is long days, long past. You know, I think the worst enemy of the new beekeepers is time. And we try to teach our beginners that they must take time or have the time to look after their bee investment. And that's what it is, and it's an investment. You spend a lot of money setting up these things, so you know what? Take time.
So what do you mean by the time? I mean the time it takes to look after the hives?
That is part of it, but it's the side of it. Okay, I haven't got enough time. I haven't got enough time to look in the hive and learn what I'm looking at because I'm in a hurry, or I've got to get this done or that done. And
well, should you have bees if you've got haven't got enough time?
Good question. Then there's the other side of the coin, that they take too much time. They muck around. It might be getting cold and they're still in there. And then realising too late what is truly needed to run a beehive and not understanding how important some of the things that they do when they inspect a hive is all about observation.
And so for new beekeepers, how long do you think it takes someone needs to commit to, say, keeping 2 colonies alive?
Okay, well, while you're learning, I think you've got to look at the 2 hives as 2 separate, homes, as it were. So they could have different personalities, they need different management, and sometimes things change a little between the 2. So probably while you're learning, maybe once a week, 2 hours per hive. Or you could go to a fortnightly basis. Or if you do 1 hive 1 week, give it a full inspection, and then the next week do the other hive. But I think on a regular basis, at least once a fortnight, and look at, for a beginner, going through a hive frame by frame can take up to 4 hours. Like if you do 1 hive a week, it would probably take you 2 hours. So on a fortnightly basis, you're looking about 4 hours. And I think it's because you just need to go slow and be calm. And generally when beginners get hives, it's in the warmer parts of the year, I guess.
Probably the longest thing is to light the smoker, isn't it?
That's right, Gary, exactly. It does seem like a long time, but there are some guides that go along with that, because that would include like getting all your gear together, like you said, lighting the smoker, having all your gear with you, making sure you've got everything. And often it's also weather dependent. So, you've got to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, a good idea is for you keen beekeepers in the Southern Hemisphere at the moment, if you bought a new smoker and you're keen to start in spring, is do some practice lightings of your smoker, and also collect some dry kindling, for it.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Gary, because over winter you do those kind of things, like build up you could dry out your sacking cloth if you use sacking cloth, or any of your bits of wood and stuff. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah,
and make all your gear, stuff like that.
Clean your frames off, rewire them or re-wax them, because of course you want to have, nice wooden frames with lovely fresh comb and, a good approach to the new season, getting them all done.
That's right, but let's get back to what are you up to in the apiary work?
Well, last show we discussed that the season is changing, and over the last couple of weeks, we've had drops in temperatures.
Oh, it's been cold.
Yeah, and at the time when I started preparing this, we didn't have single digits, but I had to put on my cardi and put my jandals aside and put on my socks and shoes.
Yes, and it was a place that I got -4.
Oh, yeah, but that was down south, wasn't it?
Yeah, Waihuru, that's it.
Waiuru's in the central North Island.
Near where my cousin lives.
Yeah, and you said on the down in the valley on your way to work, how cold was that?
6 degrees.
Wow, okay.
And there's a guy coming to sweep the chimney soon, so the fire's going on soon.
Yeah, it's all about preparation, folks. Planning and preparation, then taking action.
That's right. And what have the bees been up to? I've noticed they've been still flying in the rain, which is bizarre.
Yeah, we've had some surprise rain showers. Some of the things I've noticed on the hives that didn't have the
roving screens,
that's it. They were still doing a lot of washboarding. There was lots of pollen still coming in, and it is to this day, because yesterday I went and had a good sit in the apiary and just watched the entrances, and boy, they are bringing in some really big bags of pollen. Oh, awesome. No, it wasn't yesterday. It was the day before, because yesterday was just rain. Rain.
Today's been lightning and thunderstorms, and the power keeps going off, so this is our second attempt of recording the show.
Yeah, so we've got lots of challenges.
So what's the beekeeping been doing? A lot of Netflix, or what have they been doing?
Yeah, we have watched a few YouTube stuff, see what people are doing over in
Oh, yeah, was it that guy in Canada? That was interesting, about feeding fondant and stuff.
Yeah,
interesting.
It is interesting, and back to New Zealand, Gary.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, treating and monitoring's ongoing, and that's, you talked before about monitoring, and I think you're right. That's one of the key things that a beginner beekeeper should be doing on a regular basis, especially if you're in a country that has the Varroa destructor mite. I think that's really important. We've added the robbing screens to the newer colonies and extra hive mat with the slot. And we're still to do some brood level checks in the remaining colonies because I just haven't been able to get out there. My expectation is that we'll be reducing down and moving the honey frames up. And we hope we get really good results from the treatment. So far, we've had huge mite drops. And because of those huge mite drops, we'll be doing another double dose of the oxalic acid vaporization. Those are planned for all the hives.
Someone asked the other day in the email, what does double dose mean?
Yeah, double dose is when you do, like when we first started doing oxalic acid vaporization, we were told a 1/4 teaspoon per hive box.
Which is a gram, isn't it?
Yeah, in the head of the vaporizer. But, we've become to understand that you actually should fill the head of the vaporizer completely. So what I do when I do a double dose is I put the oxalic acid crystals in the vaporizer. I put the vaporizer inside the hive. I cover the entrance and I time it attached to the power for 2.5 minutes. Then I detach the power, leaving everything as it is in the hive and leave it closed for 10 minutes. Once that 10 minutes is up, I take the vaporizer out, fill it up again and pop it back in, and I just pull it a little bit more forward so it's sort of more towards the front of the hive, and I repeat the same thing.
Oh, okay, so you're treating them twice.
Yeah, so it's really, this method I've found has been really helpful, especially if you've got a lot of boxes on. And if you've got more than 2 boxes, this method I believe it's the best way to do it. And we always do the treatments during the day, not at night.
No, I never do it at night.
Yeah, that's wrong to interfere and go into a hive, at night. Especially when the bees are clustered, it just doesn't work properly anyway.
Yeah, and because the vapor crystallizes on the surfaces inside the hive, it doesn't need to have all the bees inside. As soon as they walk into it, they'll get it. The mites will be affected, won't they?
That's right. And the other benefit of not having clustered bees is that the bees themselves will move everything around, and you want those brood frames to get those small vapor particles on them, and the nurse bees and the brood itself. So, yeah, definitely ongoing for us at this point. And, in New Zealand, we've told you guys that we have foraging up where we are nearly, all year round. Well, we do have it year round. So we've got 12 months of beekeeping, and it doesn't stop for us.
No, it doesn't. And so when are you aiming to finish your wintering down by?
I'm looking at wintering down before the 1st of June, which is the official start of winter for us Kiwi beekeepers.
So you've got 4 weeks in.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're still keeping an eye on everything, and I think some of the colonies with more than 2 boxes, I think they are moving up a bit, so the entrances seem to be a bit less guarded, so that's a real risk for some people.
So you may find the bottom boxes empty then?
That we may find that, but the hive mat, when we add that in, that will prevent them from doing that again, but still give them the ability to go upstairs. And anyway, when we do our wintering down, we always add an extra hive mat or inner cover. And it's got the small slot in it that I've talked about so many times. The benefits are that it will help condense the oxalic acid vaporization treatment and keep it in the brood area, which means that it will be most effective there in the brood box. The other thing we do is we leave the hive basically intact. So if we've got 4 boxes, we'll have 4 boxes going into winter.
Whereabouts do you put this hive mat then, above the brood, is it?
Exactly that, Gary. By leaving the hive intact, it means I won't need to manage those hive boxes in the sheds. I don't have to worry about pests ruining them for next spring. And the bonus that we found through trialling this over the last 2 winters is that the girls have access to those frames and they will keep managing them and keeping those frames tidied and clean through winter. And for the height of those beehives with more than, 2 boxes, even the 2 boxes, we'll ratchet tie them down just in case.
Of the wind.
Yeah.
So the below the hive mat, you've got enough food for them to last winter, eh?
Well, we're talking about the hive mat with the slot. So what you do is you have your bottom box, which is the brood, and maybe a couple of frames of honey or any remaining nectar frames. And then in the next box above, you will have like empty frames or honey frames all sorted so that the bees can just go up in there and feed and then come back down. So they won't be isolated from those upper boxes.
Well, you might find the heat from the cluster goes up to the other spare boxes anyway. So that probably helps with mould and stuff, eh? Not starting.
Well, when we way back when we first started, we made a hive mat with a hole in it. And the hole was about 4 inches in diameter. And it was right in the middle. And what we found is that the cluster still moved up. But because we've done this different method, we've got the bees going up through the small slot, which is about 1 inch by about 2 inches or something, 2 centimetres by about 8 centimetres. And what it means is that it's not too big. It's slightly to the rear of the cluster. So therefore, the heat's not going to go travelling straight up, but the bees still manage the hive. It's a bit like being in a tree, I guess, and they've got all their brood and everything set up, and then they've got some cracks and the tree's damaged or something, and so they can go up higher. So it's kind of like that thought. But anyway, we trialled it a couple of seasons before doing it on all the hives, and that really worked well. And the other thing, they didn't move up.
You mean they didn't move up past the hive mat?
That's right. They stayed down the bottom. And because the hole is where the cluster is, pests can't get in. Robbing bees can't get in because they'd have to go through the cluster to get in. Because
the slot's at the back of them, isn't it? It's the opposite side to the front, isn't it?
Exactly.
Have you got a blog post that explains this in detail if people want to know more information about it?
Yes, I'm working on that. It's a work in progress.
Because it'd be interesting to see if this works in other countries, not just New Zealand. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we have talked to some overseas beekeepers that get very low temperatures, and they're doing it as well. They're actually keeping more hive boxes on with one guy just does a core flute divider. So as the inner hive mat or whatever you call it, in a cover. And that, he was saying that worked well too. So I think that with this method, it could change how people store their frames. Another bonus with the extra hive mat, with the slot, is that you can open the hive without chilling or compromising the cluster, because they will stay below the hive mat, and then you can add or open cappings of honey.
In the spare boxes. So that they can, because sometimes when they're younger bees, they can't always open the cappings, and the cappings might be a bit cold. But you can go in there and open some of the cappings for them without actually invading the whole hive, and that means you're going to have calmer bees. Kind of like having a feeder on the top, isn't it? But using natural honeycomb. Yeah. Very good comparison. But real healthy food. Okay, what are my expectations for the month coming up? Well, I'm going to get some firewood for you to keep you warm. That's always a good thing. Snow will like it too. She will. Snow's our dog, by the way. It's not snowing here, but yeah. Yeah, Snow's our dog. She's a Japanese Spitz, and she's the most awesomest awesome of awesomes. She's very white like snow. Exactly. We're getting more drops in temperatures, single digits in New Zealand. I've noticed the drone's been kicked out. Have you seen any of that?
I've still seen hives with drones at the moment. The temperatures during the day are about 20 degrees Celsius, so still ticking on, quite hot.
I saw a beekeeper in Australia had a little film of drones being thrown out of a hive in Australia. So it's the game of drones, isn't it? Starting up.
Oh, I have to watch that new series. So it'll be the winter series of the
We've got to watch the first season before we watch the
Game
8th.
of Drones.
Oh.
Winter 2019.
Poor drones.
Yes, I will expect them to be kicked out. We also are trying to prep the lawns before heavy winter sets in. We'll mow the lawns, trim back the weeds and burn off some of the old gear and old frames and just generally do a tidy up around the apiary and the workshop. And we've got building jobs over winter, just like we would advise everybody to build your new gear, get all your split gear done. If you need to get new frames, get them all tidied up and get them all prepared. You know, you've got a few months to do that, guys, so enjoy. So our results for coming into winter, we'll expect to see low mites. We'll expect to see condensed brood with honey, lots of honey available to them. And some space reduced as well to some of those colonies if it's too much. But generally they'll all be the same going into winter and hopefully strong. And then we'll just do a plan for some oxalic acid vaporization periodically through winter just to keep on top. And we'll continue to monitor through our inspection boards through winter. And if we notice any rises in that, we will treat. So what are the benefits of running honeybee colonies organically or naturally? Well, in terms of new beekeepers, it's really important not to panic. We hear on overseas there's a lot of things going on with the bees and people are saying, oh, my queen's gone or my queen's dead or whatever. The problem is that beginner beekeepers often miss the queen. So I've been advising some people to just calm down, take a step back, take a breath, and close the hive up and walk away and then go back in 2 weeks. Because you guys are going into the start of your heading into summer soon and you would have been doing your spring splits and nucleus building and everything like that. So sometimes through that process, the queens appear not to be there, but they may well be out mating or they may well not yet be laying. So don't panic.
Don't panic! Don't panic! Right, don't panic, you're all right.
I mean, sometimes when you panic, you make the wrong decision. You know, like if you see lots of queen cells and you kill them all and they haven't quite come to the point of hatching, you may realise that you've killed everything and you've got no resources left because all the eggs are too mature. So, you know, they're larvae now. So don't panic. Don't make the wrong decision. Close up the hive, walk away, consider what's happened inside. Okay?
Yeah, and maybe talk to a mentor or someone at the bee club.
Yeah, and you explain what's happening actually inside your hive, not for a generic answer to a question. It has to be relevant to what is going on in your hive. And unfortunately, they can't see that. Only you can see that, okay? My handy hint for that is that you make an assessment inspection, and this is a really good idea to do it about 6 weeks before a new season starts. The idea is that you go in and inspect the whole hive, and if possible, have a friend who can help you. They can take notes for you and photos of each of the frames that you are looking at. Then all of that is recorded, and then you can visually see what is on each frame, but the aim is only to have a look. Then close up the hive, not do any work to the hive at that time, just look. Then when you've finished and you come back home, have a look through your notes and check your photos. Zoom in, zoom out, and have a good look and identify in your own mind what you are looking at. Once you've done that, you go back in 2 weeks and repeat the same thing. So the objective of this is to see what changes have occurred in that 2-week or 14-day period. So what this will mean is by understanding what changes have occurred, it will help you to understand what the girls are up to. The key changes is about the type of brood being laid by the queen. Is it drones? Is it worker or queen cells? So in that 2-week period will give you enough time to go and sort out anything that may have happened in that period, okay? So these are indicators as to changes in the season as well. Okay, so for example, from winter to spring, you will see changes in the types of brood laying, and the amount of brood will naturally increase. So the first consideration is managing space, which is one of the most important jobs of a beekeeper. It's timing too. Timing is really important because if you add too much space too soon, you could chill the brood too soon while they're trying to raise a queen. So be careful of that, guys. Brood health is the next thing, because the last thing you want to do is, start creating nukes or whatever from very sick hives. So you've got to just stop doing anything with them if there's any signs of disease or sickness or dead bees in cells, or if there's a real high level of mite in the hive. Get everything up and running and do the treatments, monitor and perform the treatments and complete them before splitting. That is the ideal. Our mission, Gary, do you accept it? Or did you create it?
I have to accept it.
And you have created it? So our mission is to save bees one hive at a time by helping you keep your honeybees alive.
And it's mid-autumn here in New Zealand.
Yes, it is, Gary, and I can feel the change. The change is coming.
But what's happening around the world? Let's hear from our Hamurana Roving Reporters. And this week we have Roving Reporters checking in from Indiana, Oregon in the USA, Hampshire in England, and Christchurch in New Zealand.
Yay! Awesome, guys! Let's first head to
England. Okay, we've got Chris from... That was a bit funky.
That was awesome.
Chris from Three Hares Honey in Hampshire in England. And Chris is a beekeeper and a vet from the Three Hares Honey. And if you want some exceptional raw honey from rural Hampshire, check out their website. And that'll be in the show notes at kiwi.bz/141. And here's Chris.
Hello, Gary and Margaret and Kiwimana friends from around the world. It's Chris Palgrave here from Three Hares Honey in Hampshire in southern England. Well, the weather this year has been really temperamental. In February, instead of our normal snow and ice, we have beautiful warm weather. The queen started laying, thinking spring had arrived early, and some beekeepers even managed to do some early inspections. But of course winter did return, and the bees were left with large brood nests to keep warm and more mouths to feed with their winter stores dwindling. So myself and many beekeepers have been keeping a close eye on their colonies and using fondant to prevent starvation. At the end of March, the warm weather returned, and people have been adding extra supers and brood boxes to accommodate all the bees. But despite all this build-up, we only really have our spring bulbs and trees like willow providing pollen. There's still been very little nectar available. So where are we today? It's the 4th of April, and again we have sleet and snow and hail and rain, and the bees are all trapped indoors. But there is some good news. The fruit trees are beginning to flower, and I can see that the oilseed rape or canola is also about to flower, so we've got our fingers crossed for some warmer spring weather and for that nectar flow to really get underway. As well as being a beekeeper, I'm also a veterinarian, and this week I'm in Birmingham, which is a large city in the centre of England, at the British Bee Veterinary Association meeting. We've had some really fascinating talks on honeybee anatomy and physiology, on honeybee genetic diversity in the UK, and even the honeybee metagenome. Yes, well, I didn't know what that was either, but basically it's using DNA sequencing to identify everything in the bee. So you get the bee itself and all the microbes living in its intestines and anything living on the surface of the bee and any pathogens that may be present. But what I think is really interesting is understanding those good bacteria in the gut. We know they're important in us for health and immunity, and there's no reason it should be any different in the honeybee. We also had a fascinating talk on the antibacterial activity of Manuka honey, and using it on wounds that are infected with bacteria that are resistant to lots of different antibiotics. And finally, I was up talking about nosema, the common and important fungal disease of the honeybee intestine. Our meeting was rounded off with a discussion about the Asian hornet. As you may have heard, there were a handful of incursions last year, but if the predictions are correct, we expect it to pose a much more serious threat to our honeybees this year. Beekeepers are being strongly encouraged to place Asian hornet monitoring traps inside their apiaries to detect any incursion early. Far more information can be found on the National Bee Unit website and on the British Beekeepers Association website. But perhaps more about that another time. All that's left for me to do is to say thank you for listening to me. May I wish my fellow beekeepers in the Northern Hemisphere a very good start to their season, and those in the Southern Hemisphere that your winter preparations go well. Goodbye for now, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Well, thanks, Chris. That's awesome. Yeah, that Birmingham talk sounds awesome. We'll have to ask Chris if they were recorded and people can have a listen to them, because that sounds good. And they had an early spring and then what they call it, a fake spring, don't they? Or false spring?
A false spring?
Yeah, so you got to watch that. And then
Don't you have to go back to the starting gate when that happens? Otherwise you're disqualified?
Oh, that's swimming. It's different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what happens is the bees think it's spring, but it's not, and then they starve, because spring is the time when bees starve, isn't it?
Yes, because there's an expectation that they can go out and do all this magic stuff, but it's the temperatures often dictate that, really, don't they? Yes,
it's absolutely, and they build up the population and the food requirements are a lot more. It's like at Christmas time when you have all your family come over, you run out of food quicker.
That's right.
Because they're eating all the food.
The other thing that I was thinking while he was saying that is that if they had the extra hive mats or inner covers with the slot, that could have prevented some of that issue, because they would have still been warm enough. But my assumption is that there's more than one hive box, but I'm not sure. So
yes, but you may find that in colder conditions the bees may not go up past the hive mat, but we'll have to find out.
They may not as a cluster go past it, but they won't go up into the honey frames unless the honey frames are empty.
Yes.
And generally when you're wintering down, those honey frames that will be above the brood box are full.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Chris, for your report. That is awesome.
Yeah, good news, and glad to hear that Manuka honey's being used in veterinary care.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. I've heard they have used Manuka honey on horses' injuries and stuff. So,
well, that's fantastic, as long as everybody understands how awesome that stuff is.
Yeah, so now we're heading south, all the way to Christchurch in New Zealand. This is fantastic. We have another roving reporter from New Zealand. And Christchurch is in the South Island of New Zealand, which is a different island to us. And a bit of an introduction, Ian is a member of the Christchurch Hobbyist Bee Club, and he volunteers to help save the planet when he can. And he lives in Christchurch with his wife, Marette, dog Daisy, and their 40,000 bees. How does he count the bees?
I know, it's amazing, but they work hard down there in Christchurch, and with all the things that are going on, it's good to hear that there's still a buzz.
Absolutely, and you can meet Ian at the Christchurch Beekeepers Club, and the link will be in the show notes. And hear from Ian.
Hello, this is Ian Wells, reporting from Christchurch on the mainland of New Zealand. It's autumn here, so it's time to winterize our bees. I'm trying to extract one more time. I think I've got enough honey there in my single hive. And then, of course, it's time to winterize, reducing the space in the hives and putting core flute barrier between the brood box, and I'll keep a single honey box on top for winter food. And I plan to leave quite a bit of honey this year because they have had a hard season. And then, of course, narrow the entrances. For the summary for the year, it's been a pretty rough season. People say it's like the worst in 5 years for beekeepers. So commercial prices for multifloral honey have dropped from like $10 per kilogram to $3.50 in some places, which is below production costs. Commercial beekeepers are putting honey into storage this year, waiting for the price to come back up again. Why has it been so rough? It really is the weather around Christmas time. But a big factor actually this year was for bees. Clover production is down. The number of clover plants is down 50% compared to last year. And of course, we are all dealing with disease to Varroa and AFB. There's an outbreak of AFB around Selwyn this year, but those are ongoing issues. So I personally am a member of the Christchurch Hobbyist Bee Club, and that's my club here. And a lot of the people in the city here of Christchurch or in the countryside belong to that club as hobbyists. We have about 220 members. We have a fantastic site that we can meet at each Saturday, the first Saturday of every month. And it's at the bottom of the Port Hills. And if you don't know what the Port Hills are here in Christchurch, it's actually the base of an eroded ancient megavolcano, but now it's just a hillside. On our site, we have about 5 hives. Of course, our hives have been weakened this year, but too because of the lack of clover and because of the weather. And so each first Saturday of the month, we get about 70 to 80 people show up. And most of the people now are newbies to beekeeping. So we're spending a lot of time going through basics with them and getting them introduced to beekeeping. So that means the club now used to be concentrated on socializing. Now we're concentrating a lot more on training and bringing people up to speed to improve our knowledge about beekeeping. Kind of interesting thing about the club itself, I've been a member, I think, for about 12 years now. When I joined it, most of the members there were old Pakeha men like myself. The people now who belong is very mixed. It's a lot of men, women, kids, different religions, different colors of people, and completely different backgrounds and religions. As you may know, in Christchurch now, we are a grieving community. And so you see the way forward really is to work together on our common humanity and caring for our planet and environment. All cultures can do that together, and we're all seeking ways to work and coexist together. And our bee club is actually a good example of that, doing good for the environment by doing good for ourselves and do for each other, looking after each other. Lindsay Marr, who is the hive master for the Christchurch Hobbyist Bee Club, he's now just beginning his autumn survey, looking for damage by AFB and exotics as well, because we have a port nearby. And of course, we're always on the watch out for things that might have arrived on ships that could be affecting our bees. So it's a very ongoing and impressive operation to keep track of the health of our bees based on exotics. So in conclusion, I just wish all our beekeepers in the Northern Hemisphere well when you start your new season. And I really thank Gary and Margaret for just a great podcast and helping us beekeepers everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ian. Yes, that was who I was talking about, who's trying out the call flute in the...
Okay.
Really good to hear from Ian. And I just want to say that I think that, we humans are living on this one planet. And I hear what Ian's saying, that we have to be, I don't know, we don't have to do anything really, but I think it would be wise if we all decide that we should get along, and that we should accept that other people are going to have different views. And in the beekeeping, community, it's the same thing. We all have different views. So we form those views based on our own life experience. And I think that we have to accept that there are going to be differing views. Live and let live,
Yes, I do know.
So I'm glad you know, Gary, because I think love is the way forward. And I think that we all just need to just be, have some solidarity and just being kind and just accepting people.
Well, I think it's fantastic they're using the club as a kind of a community thing to break barriers, aren't they?
I think that's fantastic. And the thing is that we're all learning as well. So new things happen, new things come up, new things are being, shared. Some beginners have given me some really good information, and so we need to be open to that. And even if we don't agree, we just have to be respectful about where someone else is at, I think.
Well, I mean, you can use the bees as a bridge to other communities, because one thing I find about bee clubs is the different people it's so vast, isn't it? You've got people that work in construction, then you've got high paid lawyers, and they're all talking together about the common thing, which is bees, and different religions and different nationalities. It's awesome, isn't it?
I think so, and I love the fact that we can learn from each other, just that the possibilities are just awesome.
Yeah, and I think if we find things in the world that are common, we can work together. I mean, there seems to be a lot of diversion in the world at the moment, and there's terrible happenings in Sri Lanka lately. It's just awful. So I commend Ian and the club. It's awesome. And and just going back to what he was saying about the clover, that's a similar thing in the Hawke's Bay. They're having trouble with clover as well. And so we'll hear more about that when we talk to John Berry, won't we?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks so much, Ian, for that. And who's next, Gary?
Well, next we have John and Jenny from Tulip Tree Adopt-A-Bee in Indiana, USA. Let's hear what they're up to.
Awesome.
Hello, Gary and Margaret. This is John.
And Jeannie, checking in from Tulip Tree Adopt-A-Bee in northern Indiana, USA.
We're so glad it's finally springtime. For us, March is always the longest month of the year.
But by early April, we had sunny, mild days with temperatures reaching 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius.
So now our girls are bringing in pollen by the pound. We're happy to report that 11 of our 12 hives made it through winter.
John got out in the apiary this week and took off all the quilt boxes and sugar rims and did our first quick inspection of the season.
It was still cool, so I only went through about half the frames in the uppermost box, just enough to check for brood. Every hive had some capped worker brood in the top box, and I saw 3 of our queens. But there was no drone brood yet.
Our brood minder sensor had been showing temperature and humidity readings consistent with brood rearing, and we were really glad to see just what the brood minder had predicted when we opened the boxes.
This was our first season that we had tried to overwinter in long bench hives or in length-strith hives with all medium boxes. Both hive styles worked really well for us, and we lost only 1 colony to the polar vortex.
Now, we'll just have to wait for some drones to hatch. Then we can make splits and nukes to increase our apiary.
But meanwhile, it feels like we're off to a really great start for spring.
Many thanks to you two at Kiwimana for your encouragement and helpful tips. We've learned a lot from you, and we appreciate all you do for beekeepers all around the world.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks, guys, and we really appreciate your input to the show. It's fantastic.
Yes, I'm quite touched about that because, we try things out and recommend them and share them, and when we hear there's success like this and 10 hives coming through is fantastic, especially if that isn't really what is normally done. So I'm really, congratulations, guys. That's just awesome. And what a great report too. Thanks, guys.
Yes, and we'll have to find out about this brood minder, because I was actually talking on the interwebs with the guy that designed them, and the interesting idea, it's like a little device that you put in your hive to record things. Something we haven't really looked into, have we?
Is it all about temperature monitoring and stuff?
I think it's temperature. It's got different kind of sensors. Yeah, maybe we'll try and get him on the show and see if he can tell us about it.
Yeah, maybe John and Jenny can sort of go over what exactly it does. Then we can share that with everyone, and other people might be interested in having a look at that.
Absolutely. And now let's head to Portland, Oregon. It sounds like the season's starting in America, isn't it? So it's fantastic. Let's see what's happening in Oregon, eh?
Hi, Gary and Margaret and all the Kiwimana beekeepers. This is Mandy Shaw from Beekeeper Confidential, coming at you from my apiary located in Westland, Oregon. It's 72 degrees today, and I just completed my first inspections of the season on the 4 colonies that made it through the winter. I couldn't be happier. The brood patterns are incredible. They wintered over with a lot of extra honey. They're bringing in nectar. They're building new comb. And I was able to make 2 splits and add space to the colonies. I'm one happy beekeeper right now. Let me introduce you to some of my bees. This is such an exciting time to be a beekeeper. This is really what I look forward to all year. Out of all the beekeeping jobs that we get to do, the spring awakening is truly my favorite. It's inspirational and exciting, and there's just so much to be done. Can you hear the smile on my face? Until next time, may the buzz be with you.
The bees sound happy.
I'm not sure what they're saying, but it sounds good.
They're saying they like being at Mandy's house. Oh, thanks, Mandy. That's awesome for your report.
Congratulations on getting 4 hives through, and it seems to be a thread, people feeding with their own honey. This might be a movement, Gary.
Might be a movement.
Movement.
You know what? The funny thing is, even though those bees are millions of miles away, they still sound like our bees.
Yeah, they do.
So, it's a common thing. We're all talking about bees.
That's it.
Do you want to be a roving reporter?
Yes, you do.
It would be awesome if you could help create the buzz by being part of the show, reporting in from your location while in the field. If so, could you record a quick update, 1 to 2 minutes of your local weather conditions and what people should be doing with your bees in your area, and email that to gary@kiwimana.co.nz, or there's a link there to the speak pipe on the show notes page.
Awesome, and we look forward to hearing from new folks as well, and those of you who didn't have time to do a report, we look forward to hearing from you next time. Cheers, guys.
Yes, and we've also got a cool page now. It's called kiwi.bz/rove, and you can find out all the details about how you can submit your own roving report to us.
That'll be fantastic, and the more that you send us, the more we can share and the more we can learn, guys. So keep up the good work, everybody. So Mandy, John and Jenny, Ian, Chris. Thanks, guys. It's been awesome, and all the best, and hope you got time to do one next time.
Beekeeping news you can use. Well, that's right, we hope.
We hope this may be a lesson.
Yes, the first story. A burglar was covered in bee stings after landing on a hive filled with 80,000 bees. A funny story with a real sting to it at a South London location where an attempted burglar was taunted by 80,000 guard bees. And what's a quote from the article?
It says, a would-be burglar found himself in a sticky situation this week when he hopped over an 8-foot fence and was confronted by 80,000 angry bees. And the article goes on to say, we breed the bees to be fairly calm because we live in London and it is a public park. But if someone knocks down their door, they will be rattled and serve justice as they see appropriate. Amen. And they say that bees only sting if they are under attack and a hive acts as a single unit. So an individual bee will sacrifice itself for the hive.
Absolutely. And beekeeper Dale Gibson says the shed contained expensive gardening tools, so that's probably what he thinks the burglar was trying to find.
Yeah, the tool that was trying to get into the shed.
Yeah, exactly. And the burglar ended up on top of 4 beehives and some broke apart. Oh, I know what that's like, breaking apart hives at night.
Oh, I know.
They're not pleased.
So this is in Pottersfield Park in Bermondsey in South London.
Yes, hopefully the Beehive Jive will give us a report on this too. This must be near where they live, isn't it?
Might be, yeah.
And quoting from Dale Gibson, he said, the team did not report the attempted burglary to the police because natural justice has been served.
Good
Amen.
one. Yeah, good one, Dale. That's wonderful. And that gave us quite a chuckle, that one. And there was a bit of feedback here. And Susan Inwood said, karma. Amen.
Yeah, amen.
And Charlotte Anderson said, I shouldn't laugh, but I did. Good on you, Charlotte.
So did we.
Yeah. Graham Manning said, just a shame he wasn't allergic to bee stings. I'm sure the article would have mentioned that. Yeah, dead body found on top of hives with multiple stings.
Multiple sting, dead body found in park. But I think because they didn't find him, he's probably all right. Well, hopefully he's learnt something, eh?
Yes.
Because karma can do that.
Yes, that's right. And what's the next article, Gary?
All hell broke loose. Exterminators battle monster wasp nest. Wow. A massive wasp nest has been located in a tree near Hamurana, which is near Rotorua, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
We have an article about this.
It is one of the largest wasp nests that I've seen in my 30 years in the industry. It's extremely active and quite difficult to deal with. We've had 2 goes at it already. We were directed towards it yesterday. I'm not one to swear, but I did offer an expletive under my voice when I saw it because, as I said, it's very large, very nasty, and it's going to take quite some work to get rid of it.
Yes, and that was the exterminator Chris Brunel. He's a brave man, isn't he? You've seen the photos of this thing.
Indeed.
What's the quote from the article, Margaret?
A monstrous wasp nest measuring about 2 metres wide and 2 metres tall which was found bordering a Hamurana property, is proving a tough opponent for the local exterminators. And don't forget, it was up a tree. So it must have been about 4 metres up in a tree or something.
I know. Did you see the photos? It looked like the Day of the Triffids. It looked like that, didn't it?
Indeed.
And the exterminator, Chris Brunel, estimated the nest contained 1 million wasps.
$1 million.
Oh, not dollars, wasps. It's the biggest nest he has seen in 30 years of doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So it must be pretty shocking to come across something like that.
And he's saying that this season is the worst season for wasps he has had in decades. And we're feeling the same, eh?
It has been there has been so many wasps in our area, but sometimes I think it's kept at bay because we get a lot of rain. Yeah, I agree that the wasps, even the paper wasps, are quite prolific this year, eh?
There's lots of them around. Even one was on one of the Kiwi lifestyle hives, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think something dealt to that because I went out. I think a hedgehog might have started eating the larvae or something.
So it must have been low enough for a hedgehog then, because they're not exactly long bodies, are they?
And we returned back from our tangent, guys.
Anyway, we looked up the Guinness World Records, and the largest wasp nest ever outside wasp nest was 3.7 metres long, and that was on a farm in Waimaku in 1963, and that's not far from where we live, is it?
Yeah, only about, 30 kilometres away.
Yeah, and as the crow flies, really close.
Yeah, that would be 12.
Or the wasp flies. And the record for the biggest inside nest was 7-metre nest located inside an abandoned home in Madrid, Spain.
Oh, wow.
Some details there of the record. So if you find a bigger one than that, you should report it to the Guinness World Records.
Yeah, guys. So that's pretty interesting stuff. And the feedback from Brian Mitchell says, fancy trying to deal with it at that height. Drop it with a chainsaw and deal with it at ground level. Important to kill it completely or thousands of queen wasps will be being released into the region from a nest that size. And Cara Lassane Belsha says, holy moly, what a whopper. Well, thanks, Brian and Cara. Those are real good comments. And I think, it's pretty amazing, to be honest. And that must have been hard yakka for those guys. But well done to them.
Yeah, I hope they've got a good bee suit.
Yeah, and brave souls.
Okay, we've come to the end of the show.
I know it's sad, guys, but we've enjoyed our time with you.
And do you love what we do?
Do you love what we do? I hope so. Did you find something useful for your beekeeping in our last show? Or are you subscribing to our free newsletter? Or do you want to help us produce more content? In addition to being a supporter, it also gives you some extra things, like exclusive secret RSS feed that provides you with early access to shows. You get the shows a week before the general release date. Awesome. And also exclusive supporter behind-the-scenes videos via the Patreon application. And we also thank you personally on our podcast. So the other thing, the final thing that you get by becoming a supporter, you will get a warm heart. You'll sleep better at night knowing you are helping the beekeeping community and helping Gary and Margaret produce more shows, videos and blog posts for the beekeeping community. So, Gary?
So why not join us today at kiwi.bz/banana. And just to note, our supporter site is based in the US and which operates in US dollars. Yes, and the show notes for this podcast is kiwi.bz or BZ/141.
Yes, and we look forward to you being part of helping to create the Kiwimana buzz.
Absolutely, and we shall be back in a couple of weeks with a show.
All things being good.
Yes, all things being good with health and back injuries and plane crashes. Who knows?
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much to you all, and we've just loved being here today and glad we could do that and be with you. And enjoy, everybody, and Keep up the good work. See ya.
Should we have a cup of tea, then we'll do the John Berry one?
When we do our winter...
Sorry.
Sorry.
What's the quote from the article, Mark? Anyway, and this